Good morning, everyone. This is, it's morning for me, I should say. Good, whatever time it is for you. This is Mr. Miller, and today we're going to be talking about the ins and outs of the death penalty. The reason why we're doing this is because you will have a timed essay about whether or not the United States should have the death penalty or not. So, before I let you write about it, I want to give you like the pros and cons of everything. And before I do that, I have to kind of give you like a little brief history of the death penalty itself and the different ways that people are executed in the United States. So, learning targets are I can understand how to form an opinion, and I can understand the pros and cons of the death penalty. All right, so first and foremost, in 2021, if you take a look, here's a map of the United States. Right now, there are 24 states that have the death penalty, and there's 23 without the death penalty. So it's almost a 50-50 split. And then in purple states, it says governor imposed moratorium, which means that in certain circumstances, a governor can ask for the death penalty for certain people. So it's literally about 50-50 depending on what state you live in. Notice Wisconsin does not have the death penalty. Wisconsin has never had the death penalty. And actually, for people that have family members that live in Illinois, Illinois used to have the death penalty, and now they do not. So interesting stuff. Maybe not, but I think it's interesting. So brief history of the death penalty in America. So the death penalty in America has been around since the 13 colonies. I mean, that's just how it is. It's been like that. As time went on, and like when the 13 colonies became the United States, basically in the Constitution and in our government, the federal government stated that the death penalty can be determined by each individual state. So that's why some states have the death penalty and some don't. Still to this day, states change their mind about having the death penalty. They have the right to do that. So if I go backwards, like I said before, Illinois used to have the death penalty and now it doesn't. There's a whole bunch of states that used to have the death penalty. For example, in Monster, it takes place in the 90s. In the 90s, New York State right here had the death penalty. It doesn't now. And some states go back and forth. Some states do get rid of the death penalty, and some states bring it back, and some states go from no death penalty to having the death penalty. It just depends on what the state and what the people in the state want. So keep that in mind. In America, the federal government, so the government like that's not from the state, so everything else that's the federal government, like the White House, Congress, the Senate, all those things, you can commit a federal law, and the federal government does execute people every once in a while. So different states have different ways to execute people, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. Same goes for the federal government. People that are executed are typically have done something very bad, like murder, rape, usually a mix of those two, or terrorism charges. I have never heard of anybody like stealing money and then being put to death. They don't execute people for doing ridiculously small things or things that are not endangering people's lives. Like, for example, is if you were to run over somebody in your car and you hurt them but you don't kill them, you're not going to be put to death. Death is reserved for a very small minority of people, but still it is a hot button issue today, so please do keep that in mind. So first and foremost, hanging is one way that executions do take place in the United States. Very few states have hanging executions. It's been a long time since there has been one, but they're still out there. So hanging is one of the oldest forms of execution that America has. People convicted of a crime are led to a platform called a gallows and have a rope tied to their neck. They're also tied up. The floor opens up below where the noose is, and if it's done properly, it's supposed to break the victim's neck. And if it doesn't, well, that's really unpleasant for the person being hanged. Instead of dying with a broken neck, they're kind of like struggling and, around and basically are being suffocated to death and being choked to death, which is not very pleasant. So another form of execution is a firing squad. I think that there's been like maybe 2 to 3 times in American history that like a criminal has been shot at a firing squad. So in a firing squad, a person is put up against a wall and is typically blindfolded and then shot by a bunch of armed guards or soldiers or what have you. So that does not happen very often. I cannot even I know it's happened, but like it's in like the single digits. So it's not very, very common. So the electric chair is a newer form of execution for America. There are still states that do this frequently. So the person who's being killed, or I should say executed, I'm not going to say killed because that implies that that uh, they're being murdered when it's really different. The person who's being executed sits in a chair like this here and has electrodes attached to different parts of their body and are shocked to death. It should say are, so I'm going to change it really quickly too. All right. So this is very popular, more modern, much more modern than like a firing squad or hanging. It's still not pleasant. It hurts probably like heck. Um, the another more modern form of execution is a gas chamber, and this is not like the Holocaust gas chambers, which we'll talk about in a few months. Gas chambers are this big, like metal room, as you can see, with windows on it. People are strapped into those tiny little chairs that you can see right here. Um, and then what happens is that the room is filled with poisonous gas. The people that are being executed are put in there, and they die. That's pretty much it. Not super pleasant either. The last one is lethal injection. Lethal injection is the most modern form of execution in America. Um, People that are being put to death are strapped down and injected with different medications, which is supposed to kill the prisoner quickly and without pain. Later, we will discuss how sometimes this goes awry or how it gets messed up and it doesn't work so pleasantly. So, it's the most used form of execution in the United States. Most of the states with the death penalty inject people like this. Also, as well, if Steve in our story is found guilty, he can be put to death this way. So, either way, like none of this is pleasant, but the lethal injection is supposed to be the most humane, quote unquote, forms of death through execution. So please do keep that in mind. Anyways, thank you for watching your video. Thank you for watching this video. Have a wonderful day.